Hello, and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guest today has broken free from the establishment to bring us a message, a signal of great things to follow. Always playing the hand they're dealt, save for a few wild cards here and there. She casts her dark lantern over the savage world to shed light upon the Deadlands and the rolling bones of adventures. Having played her part in a revival, and feeling, or should I say, feline, fine, we can find her in the Wild West as part of a coven or part of a steampunk world. Joining me today is actor, streamer, YouTuber, self-confessed Dr. Pepper addict, Meghan Cave. Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Clever. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to get you on the show. Before we go into some of the things that I alluded to there in the introduction, would you mind telling us how you got into tabletop role-playing games, please?
Yeah. Well, it started for me in college. My boyfriend at the time, now partner, was playing it in college, and I had no concept really of what they were doing. I thought they were effectively LARPing around their apartment for 10 hours. It's kind of what I thought. But eventually, I got to play, and it started with 3.5 D&D, and it was a lot of fun, and I kept playing, and here I am. And then eventually I got into the streaming world in, let's see, it was 2016 when Wes Otis, who now does Plate Mail Games and 12-Sided Die, was going to run a show for Saving Throw, and I had no idea what any of this was. He's like, hey, here's a friend of mine. Hey, you want to come do this? And I was like, okay. And the rest is history. Here I am.
Here you are. I mean, you're on a variety of different streams, all of which we'll touch on shortly. So, from that first appearance on Saving Throw, where has the journey taken you to where you are now? What sort of experiences have you had, if you wouldn't mind?
Oh, gosh, that's a huge question. So many. I mean, of course, whenever, it's 6 years later, you're a different person, but I'm a different person. I mean, there's a lot that I've learned. I've grown a lot as a creator, as a performer, as a person, throughout all of this, and gained a whole lot, a lot of new skills that I did not have before. Because when I started with Saving Throw, I mean, it was just kind of it was new. I mean, streaming TTRPGs in general was still pretty new. And, so there was no, I mean, I suppose maybe there isn't even now, but there was kind of it was a new frontier. So we were figuring it out as we went, and I got really excited about it because as an actor in Los Angeles, it can be hard to find opportunities to perform. And this was a really cool opportunity to do so. I got to play a role-playing game and I got to be a performer. And I got to mix those two things. It was almost even better than acting because I got to create the character and decide what they said. And so I got really excited about it, and I'm like, what can I do? And so kind of through all of that, I learned to run social media. I taught myself to do some editing. I learned marketing stuff. I learned how to produce a show through a lot of trial and error. And I learned a lot, and I've become a much better performer and a much better just everything in a lot of ways. So yeah, and then here I am today, trying to do my own production company, whatever that means to me. It's interesting. Clearly that means a lot of different things to different people, but yeah, it's a really cool and scary journey.
And that journey has taken you a great many places, and we'll touch on those in a moment. But you mentioned there marketing, so let's lean on the marketing side of things slightly.
Sure.
Where can people find you on your social medias and everything you're associated with, please?
Yes. Well, you can find me at Meghan Caves on Instagram and Twitter, and that's MEGHANCAVES. And then at Gone Rogue Entertainment is my production company that I have begun as of I guess, when did I begin it? This year? I don't even remember. The end of last year. That is Gone Rogue Entertainment at Gone Rogue ENT on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And my current main show that I'm doing through that is Harbingers, which you mentioned earlier, but it is Savage Worlds. And we just wrapped season 2, and you can find Harbingers at Harbingers RPG on all of the socials as well. Those are the big main things. Everything else that I'm doing kind of goes through my social media, is the best place to keep track of that for me and anyone else.
Yeah, I will tack onto there. You can also support Meghan through Ko-fi and through Patreon. So if you want to add that extra support, please.
Oh, thank you.
All those links will be in the content, the description below this podcast. So please scroll down and support Meghan. You mentioned there Harbingers and a few of the other systems all sort of use the Savage Worlds system. What is it about that game system that brings you back? Is it part of the performing group, the role playing group you're in, or is it something about that particular game system that you enjoy more than others, should we say?
Uh, it's the system. It's definitely the system. It is such a cinematic system. I mean, whenever I first played it, I didn't like it actually, because it's because I was used to D&D, and if
Hmm.
you go into playing Savage Worlds the way you would play D&D, you're going to get killed very quickly. And that's what happened to me, and I got very upset. um, uh, but once I understood the combat system, because the combat system is different in Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of systems you have sort of this attrition with the hit points. You're slowly whittling it down. In Savage Worlds, it's everybody has 3 wounds or 1 wound, and basically you've got to get through a fair amount of barriers to hit that. But there's lots of ways to do that, and
Hmm.
something very weak or something very strong can do that. So it's kind of a free for all, which makes it a bit swingy, but it makes it very exciting because
Hmm.
you've got dice that explode constantly, and that's just makes for a lot of fun. Also, the system in and of itself is generic, so it kind of allows you to learn a rule system and then apply it to all different kinds of settings, which I really enjoy. And it's easier on me as someone who has a hard time learning rules. It's really great to just know a set of rules and be able to play whatever I want within them.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would have found Savage Worlds if not for Jordan, my partner, who at the time was kind of trying to find a system that worked best for them, uh and discovered this one, and was like, okay, this, because Jordan was my GM, okay, this is what we're gonna play.
Hmm.
And then I fell in love with it through playing. And for streaming, it's just a fantastic system for streaming in general because it lends itself to being very cinematic,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of different rules that you can use or not, and kind of allow it to work for your purposes. So yeah, it's definitely the system, and I am always trying to get more people to play it because it's just fun and I want to share in my joy.
Can't argue with that. And like, clearly, those listening to this can't see it, but the joy, the expressions of joy as you describe the system and the game and playing it is inspiring to say the least, and something to behold.
Hmm.
So you mentioned how easy generic this is and how it could be overlaid onto various things. So what was it like moving character from, say, Piper in Coven to Cat in Eden Redux? What's
Hmm.
with the system there as the backbone? What's it like shifting characters, shifting theme, and sort of bringing someone new to the table, but still within that same rule set, effectively?
Hmm. um it's interesting. I feel like it lends itself to more freedom, for me to be able to do that,
Hmm.
because I mean, I think you could play any game like this, but Savage Worlds lends itself. It doesn't really have classes. It's whenever you're playing a setting like Deadlands is one of their settings, for example.
Hmm.
It has archetypes. Like a huckster is an archetype that you can play, and they have basic rules that are applied to them, but it's not really a class. And in general, in Savage Worlds, there's no class, so you're kind of like, it makes you think about building your characters differently than going, well, I'm going to play a rogue or I'm going to play this. So in a lot of ways, that can be a little bit intimidating if you're coming from a system where you're used to having a class, and that is definitely takes a bit of time. But now I find it a lot more freeing, because it allows me to think of creating characters in a different way than I would in a system with kind of cut and dry classes. And so I feel like it gives me the opportunity to play more dramatically different characters without having to go, okay, great, or okay, oh no, I have to learn this whole new set of rules that applies to this particular character. If that kind of makes sense, it's a bit more
Yeah, of
simple.
course.
And so for me, that gives me a lot of freedom because I don't have to think about it as much and I can just play. Um, so that's really cool. And then also what's really cool, if you watch both of those seasons, Harbingers, Coven, and then Eden Redux, Coven is very low combat in a lot of ways. It's not as you aren't dealing with as many high numbers, whereas you go into the Cyberpunk, into Eden Redux, we're dealing with like, big damage numbers, and bigger damage. Well, I guess I just said that twice, but yeah, bigger damage,
Just shows how
more
much bigger it is.
how bigger the damage is, of course, yes. But yeah, it's kind of interesting in that way. I feel like I've gone a bit rambly here, but
No,
the
no,
gist
not,
of it
not at all.
is you get that freedom, and I really appreciate that.
No. So, having sort of played the wild cards, so the Deadlands setting, the sort of the lower fantasy Coven side of stuff, and then Eden Redux, and now Axion, which is steampunk. Which of the settings is your favorite? Obviously, Axion is coming soon, season 3 for Harbingers, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm,
What
mm-hmm.
you'll have to explain, sort of promote that a little bit for when that's due to be released. But which of these settings that you've experienced so far has been your favorite?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, I will always have a love for original Deadlands, for just the Weird West Deadlands setting. It's just, and honestly, I think that's because of wild cards. I think that's because of that first campaign that we did, and I just, it was my first big, like, it wasn't just my first kind of main time playing Savage Worlds in such a large way. It was my first time being able to play in that way, to develop a character in that way, to like to play with a group like that. Like, there was a lot of firsts there. So I feel like I have a particular affinity for that. But Axion is really cool. Cheyenne Wright has created a really cool world that he kind of talks about it, but is kind of like an homage to all the space opera, to Star Trek, to Star Wars, to Battlestar Galactica. It's kind of all this together, and then it's also steampunk. So he calls it the Gilded Age of space travel, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's really cool. It's really cool. It's really thoughtful, and I very much enjoy it. And I haven't played something quite like this in that sense. It's kind of like what's it called? Treasure Planet almost, but
Okay.
steampunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really cool. And I do enjoy that. But yeah, I still, Deadlands is neat. It's so neat. It's got so many cool horror elements, and I just can't get away from enjoying that.
Can't argue with you there and your own experiences. But so going from that to Axion, can you tell us a little bit more about Axion with respect to your character, when we're expecting to see it released for our entertainment? Yours clearly, but also ours.
Yeah, totally. It will be released on July 5th. And I believe, I'm not sure the time, and that's whenever it will begin to air. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. My character is a cogsmith, which is, in this instance, if you do know Deadlands, it's sort of like a mad scientist. So it's essentially a magic user who uses, like, it's an artificer, uses little machines or whatever. Cogsmith specifically, I'm using cog work, so everything is cog working gears and things like that. And in this world that Cheyenne has created, there are these cogwork androids called historians, and they are essentially they were human at one point, and then that human's personality and mind and everything got uploaded to this cogwork historian. And then there are, in this world, there's kind of this whole, he's got this whole, um, uh, I mean, for lack of a better way of putting it, he's created this entire world that has all these rules and all these things that happen. So in this world, I don't remember the particular reason, but nobody can live past 300 because they have learned how to extend life in some different artificial ways, but they found that after that point, it kind of becomes unfair to live longer, essentially. Except for some historians who work with the Ministry of Knowledge, I believe, who go around and essentially collect knowledge and maintain it. And my character is one of those. And they're kind of treated like diplomats. And my character is, she has a hindrance that is cocky. And it's one that Cheyenne came up with, and it's absolutely fantastic because basically at the beginning of any combat, my first round must be spent by me telling the bad guys how I'm going to defeat them and why they should just go ahead and fight. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it is, and this is a very good example of what my character is like. She is overconfident, and and she is cocky, and she is a mess. So but her name is Iris Bell Fielding, and I this group has been really fun, and I think it's going to be a good show, so I'm looking forward to it.
No, I have no doubt in that whatsoever. And so going from a system that uses that doesn't sort of have structure in the same way that say D&D does, so uses tropes rather than archetypes, but leaning into the archetype, you've gone rogue and gone rogue with your entertainment. And so tell us a little bit more about establishing your own company and this Gone Rogue Entertainment.
Oh yeah. Well, it honestly, where it has come from for me was I I wanted to give myself a place to create, to kind of create whatever I wanted, and I wanted to give myself some legitimacy behind that. And this is all kind of for my own brain, because it can be really hard. I have found it to be hard to go, okay, I'm gonna do an RPG show under my own name, or I'm gonna just create this product under my own name. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it can be easier to be like, well, who am I? Why do I think I should put this out under my name? And in some ways, giving myself this like company where I can kind of go, yeah, I'm making it for my company. It gives my brain a legitimacy that allows me to create. So that's really why I have done it. And also, I've spent a lot of time creating for other people. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I've made a lot of compromises that I didn't want to make, and this is kind of what I was talking about earlier when I've learned a lot about myself. I grew up, I was a people pleaser. You know, I didn't want to get into conflict. I wanted to make everybody happy all the time, and I didn't know my own boundaries because I had never had the opportunity to learn it. And I burned myself out. I did too much for everyone else and didn't do enough for me. And so this is kind of me going, okay, I'm going to give myself a place to create what I want to create and then see where it goes. And that's really what Gone Rogue has been to me. And it's also allowed me to prove to myself that I'm capable of doing some of these things, which is really cool. It's a really cool thing to be able to experience. So that's Gone Rogue.
So also to be found on your website is Adventure Bones. So would you mind expanding on what that is for those who will go across and follow the link and all that sort of good stuff? Adventure Bones, please.
Yeah. Adventure Bones was it was birthed out of the idea of going, what's a way I can give myself some fun performances to do that could be, you know, just like fun for other people too, hopefully. And what I wanted to essentially create was, whenever you're running a game and as a GM and somebody, and you have these clues for somebody to discover, and then maybe they discover it and it's like an audio log that they get to listen to, is essentially the idea. That's essentially the idea of it. And what I wanted to do was create these audio logs that are fairly open-ended. So it's I only have 2 Adventure Bones out right now because Harbingers kind of took over my life. The first one is called Newtown, and it's essentially this woman. It's her diary entries that you find. She's moved into this new house, and she kind of slowly discovers that there's some weird stuff going on in the house. And so you've got 4 diary entries, and I tried to make them fairly open-ended so that someone could come in and decide what their story is or apply it to their campaign that they are already doing. Um, that's essentially the idea. And then it also includes, it's got the voiceovers that I did, and then it also includes written out diary entries. And in this particular one, it's got a ritual item spell list because there is a ritual element to it. So yeah, that's basically what they are. The other one is the experiment, which was kind of based off of Event Horizon. So it's sort of the idea of a portal that gets opened, and then, you know, maybe something comes through. I don't know what's going on. And then, you know, I've got plenty of ideas for others down the line. Just got to find time to do them. But yeah, that's Adventure Bones, and they're kind of an experiment. So hopefully people enjoy them. I've enjoyed making them.
Well, that's all part of the fun, and I'm sure people will find plenty of use for them. This versatile, which is always helpful for DMs and GMs, since they're sort of system agnostic.
Totally.
Also on Gone Rogue Entertainment is The Whistler.
Yeah, The Whistler is my first short film that I made with Diana Restrepo, and it was really fun. We kind of did it all in like a week's go, because it was another one of those things where I was like, so one thing that I've experienced working with various different people is that it's very, very easy when you have limited supplies and limited resources to go, well, I guess we can't do that thing because we don't have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever. We don't have all these things that we need to create this. But my whole thing was, I don't think that's true. I think if you think creatively and you're willing to compromise in certain areas, you can do whatever you want with what you've got. You just got to get creative. And so that again is kind of what Gone Rogue is about for me as well, is sort of proving to myself that I can do that. And so The Whistler was kind of, that was my first kind of thing that I did with Gone Rogue. And Jordan, my partner, was just like, gave it a go. It was like, I have this idea. Here's a script. And I went, great, Diana, let's shoot this thing. Come over here. We did it on my phone and webcam and put it out. And somebody accepted it to a film festival, which blew my mind. So I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. But yeah, that's The Whistler. It was really fun. I did it all in about a week's time, and I'm proud of my little short film, and I hope to do more. I've got some more scripts, so down the line, hopefully we'll do more as well.
Nice. No, it was good. I enjoyed watching it. It was
Thank you.
the right intensity and creepiness to it. No, it was good. The cliffhanger ending. I was very much happy with that. So, slightly disturbed by it, but happy that was, yeah. You know where I'm going with it. I know what I mean.
Of course.
So you mentioned on your website, your personal website, link will be in the description below, that you like to learn accents and different sort of skills and things like that. So from a personal experience, what has been the most challenging either mannerism or accent or verbal quirk you not had to, but chose to learn?
Ooh, that's a good question. Scottish has probably been the hardest dialect that I have done, but also the most rewarding, because when when you get it right, it's like, oh, it's so exciting. Like, yes, I did it. It's kind of funny actually, because so back when I was doing dragons and things, and we started Bantam, which is actually coming back, which was exciting. But anyway, the side note. But I was like, I'm gonna do a Scottish accent for this character. It's gonna be great. And of course, this was right before the pandemic, and then we didn't finish the show, and I was disappointed that I didn't get to play with my Scottish accent some more. So I decided to make Cat on Eden Redux Scottish for, you know, whatever random reason, because I wanted to play with it again. And it's kind of funny watching back through when I was editing. I was like, the first few episodes, that accent is pretty bad, and then it starts to get better, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty exciting. So I would definitely say Scottish is the hardest. And on top of that, the time when I was playing Grace on Bantam, and I was doing the Scottish accent for the first time, I then started playing Celestina on Wild Cards, and I was going for sort of a Romanian accent. I think it was probably a bit more Russian, but in there. And Scottish and Russian have so many similar signature sounds, so just basic sounds, that I couldn't. I had a really hard time switching between the two. I got really lost. So that was also difficult. But yeah, I absolutely love accents and dialects, and they are just a blast. I would
Mm.
love to learn. I hope to continue to learn more. That is my
Yeah,
goal.
yeah, definitely. So going from a craft kind of challenge, what during your sort of, I was going to say playing career, but that sounds an odd way of phrasing it. Your role playing experience. What
Mhm.
has been a particular challenging moment for you as a character, potentially as a player, but as a character moment that has touched you either for your own character or as part of the group?
Hmm. Um, I think there are a lot of those. When uh, when I have been able to play with a group in a game that is willing and able to get down into more emotional things, to really take the emotion and the stakes seriously, and
Mm,
to be able to kind of have that dynamic and that back and forth. I think there's a lot of stuff that's really meaningful. For me, one of the things that, and I don't do this every time, it kind of depends on the game, but
of
I
course.
like to create characters that are that have some element, maybe that of myself that I want to explore, or some element that I'm scared of that I want to explore, something that I want to some personality trait that is maybe a bit of a challenge for me. And whenever you I get the opportunity to do that, there are definitely some moments where you kind of get to play a character. You get to play in this safe space, this aspect that you don't always feel like you can do in real life, and it's really rewarding in that way. I don't know if I have a specific example, but I will say the character that has always and will probably always remain one of the most important with regards to this is Rosaline, who is my wild cards, my first character for wild cards for Deadlands, because she was the first one who I that was one of the first times I played a character that was so kind of like in your face and brash, and she was really sex positive, and she was really just like kind of she was everything I was afraid to be
Nice.
in a lot of ways, and she allowed me to see that I didn't need to be afraid, that I had the ability to do that. I mean, I have a tattoo in honor of her on my shoulder to remind
Nice.
me that yeah, that was me, and that
Mm,
I am capable of those things. So that's really meaningful, and I've had that with a lot of my characters. And then sometimes whenever you're playing games like this, I think this can happen when you're at home, but especially when you're doing it on stream, the intensity and the stakes can be a little bit higher. And so, you kind of go through fire with people for better or worse
mm.
when you're playing these intense games. And so I feel like there have been, I don't know that I have one in mind, but there have definitely been some moments that were really rewarding and intense. And a lot of those happened on wild cards for me for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So going from something you said there about a safe space,
Mm.
obviously that is so important to have at a table. What processes have you seen that works really well to ensure that players, uh, both on sort of the streaming platforms and in our home games, what processes have you found that work the best for providing that safe space for us all to have a game for us all to enjoy?
Mm. Well, I think the biggest thing at the end of the day is communication, and I would say that that's true for a home game or a stream game. Um, I I think it's important to communicate the type of game that's going to be played. I don't know that everybody worries about this quite as much, but for me, I have a tendency. All my games are very specific in tone. In general, I like a more dramatic game, and I love to play with horror. But if I have somebody who's coming to my table who's like, I want to play a goofy, hilarious uh, murder hobo game or whatever,
Mm,
they're probably not going to be super happy with my game because I don't tend to run a ton of combat. I tend to focus on various different things. And that can, if you aren't on the same page, that could leave both me and the person who's playing expecting something else to be angry.
mm,
And that can, over time cause some big issues. So I think it's really, really important to sort of have that communication ahead of time of like, hey, here's the kind of game I'm planning to run. Are you willing to play this with me? Are we going to go on this journey together? And then obviously safety is really important. And this one is interesting. I see a lot of reactions kind of in both directions to safety. For me, I always make sure that we have lines and veils of some kind, which essentially is a hard no. If you don't know lines and veils, it's a line is we're not going to go there at all. A veil is it might be discussed, but kind of like off camera, basically, like we're not going to actually do a scene dealing with this particular topic. And then I usually also like to have the X and O cards, which X is the subject is done. We're gonna leave it immediately. N is I think we're starting to get close to a subject that is uncomfortable. Can we go ahead and move along? And O is just going, hey, I'm okay, or are you okay? You're emotional in this scene, and I just want to make sure it's the character, not you, or whatever it might be. So I think in my experience, people, I've not really had anybody use them, but they're there for the person who does need to. And I think that's important because as a performer and someone who enjoys the role play aspect very much and the performance aspect of this, if you don't have a space where you feel safe to do that, it's not fun. It sucks. And it can be very vulnerable, and it can really affect your mental health. I mean, we talk about, RPGs are essentially it's sharing your imagination with someone, and that's vulnerable. It's creating with someone. It's going, here's my idea, and if the other people at your table make fun of you for that, that's going to affect you negatively. And I think it's really important for me at my tables. I don't want to see that ever. I want everybody to be respectful of everyone else because I know how much that can affect people. And especially when you're performing, it sucks to be cut down like that. It just really, really does, and I don't want to see that. So, I really spend a lot of time probably driving my cast insane, but I'm always like, here's our lines and veils. Here's this. Here's our expectations. Here's where my decisions end and yours begin, and vice versa. And then at the end of all of my seasons, we do a debrief, and I sit down and we go, here's what worked. Here's what maybe could go better. What do you all have to say? Keeping that open dialogue, I just think is really important in all ways.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
definitely.
feel like I've answered that in a very long way, but
No,
but
no,
but yeah.
yeah, no. The more comprehensive, the better. I think that you'd be selling yourself short if you gave a shorter answer. So that's fine. And
Sure.
it has been described to me as calibration tools because it does the same. It calibrates the game to the table,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
the table to the game and all that sort of stuff.
Definitely.
So moving from calibration or safety tools onto to games, are there any games out there that I can clearly see your love for Savage Worlds, but is there any games out there you're like, one day I'd like to give that system a go?
Oh yeah, I would really like to play Dread. I have not played Dread yet. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's essentially uses a Jenga tower,
Hmm.
and as you make decisions, you have to take out a block, and if it falls, bad things happen. So it just really, I mean, obviously by the name of it, it is clearly specifically for horror and things like that. But it just seems like a really cool system. That is one that I have yet to play. I've played a few
Hmm.
others like it, like 10 Candles, and the Alien RPG is really cool
It
for
is,
horror.
yeah.
Yeah, as you can tell, my theme clearly is horror. I'm going for horror, I guess. But yeah, Dread, definitely Dread.
Nice, nice, good choice. I haven't played it either. The Alien, the Free League Alien game, I adore. I've been lucky enough to run it a couple of times. It's so good, but that's a
Yeah.
personal preference. So you have Gone Rogue Entertainment, you have
Mhm.
your streaming, you have all your other commitments. Do you get downtime? We mentioned mental health there a little earlier. Do you get downtime to decompress and just be you?
I do more so now than I used to. I when we were doing wild cards and before that, I mean, really, I guess the way I should put it is before the pandemic. I was nonstop. I mean, I didn't. Um, I didn't know how to not be nonstop. I never did. That's how I grew up. It's, you know, it was school. It was go, 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 create, 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 make, whatever. And I'm good at that, unfortunately. And I didn't really know how to relax. And then the pandemic came along and a lot of things changed. My life changed in a huge way. Um, and I was forced to slow down, and I learned a lot about myself, and discovered how much of myself I was burning up trying to do so much. And that for me is another reason that I started Gone Rogue, is because I didn't want to live by everyone else's expectation of metrics that needed to be met. Not that there's anything wrong with meeting those metrics, but it's in I want to say in the RPG space, and it is true in the streaming RPG space, but I think it's true in our culture in general. There's this go, 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 hustle, hustle, like constant. It's never enough. There's never enough content. You're never doing enough. You're never putting enough out. There's never enough views. There's never enough money. You know, there's all these various different things, and you can get really swallowed up by that. And I have done that. I've been swallowed by that. And I can't, I don't want to live like that. I don't want my entire life to be that.
No.
So Gone Rogue for me is the opportunity to kind of go, I'm going to put this out when I'm ready to. And it also allows me to go, I'm going to only work on doing this for 2 hours today. And the rest of the day, I'm going to paint, or I'm going to watch television or whatever. So, now, having said all of that, I did not do a very good job. I did not do a very good job with Eden Redux and my editing timeline. I put it out before I should have, and ended up having to edit an episode per week. It was constantly like doing it as a full-time job. So I will know better for next time. So it's a bit of yes and a bit of no sometimes, I think, is really the answer to your question.
There's always space for learning
Ah,
and
yes.
and teaching. So you mentioned a lot of things there that apply sort of mainly to you, but what about someone else that's inspired? Because I'm sure hundreds and if not thousands of people are inspired by yourself and the other role players they see, the other podcasts, the other streams, the other things like that. What would be your advice to those that want to get into maybe stream performances and games and things like that?
It's a good question. I think my advice would be to do the things that you enjoy. Don't lose track of what is fun. It is really, 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 really easy. And I can say this too as an actor, because it's when you're out here trying to perform, and I see it in the RPG space, because for me the RPG space is the LA RPG space. There's sort of this like it's what I was talking about before, this grind, this like constant go, go, go. Somebody's given me an opportunity, must take opportunity. Because you know you're screaming it into a void. There's so many people and there's so many things. You're trying to like get out there and do all this, and I get it. I totally get it. But I have spent more time playing games I did not enjoy, and that began to make me dislike playing the game at all. And that sucks. Like, that's not what I was doing in the first place. You know, I started doing this because I enjoyed it. It's easy to lose track of that when you're streaming, and especially if you're like, you know, wanting to do it fairly seriously. It's really, really easy. So I think it is extra important to continue to come back and do and focus on what you enjoy, even if it isn't the popular thing. It is so much more important to do what you enjoy, and it's so much more important to have fun, because your life is like that experience is right now. You're doing that, and that's what you can sustain. You can't sustain the other stuff. Eventually it will burn you out. That's what I would say. There's so many other things, but that's a number one to me.
Yeah, no, stealing from the, I think it's gambling aware or whatever, when the fun stops, stop kind of thing. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
It's important.
Sage advice almost, if that's the right way of putting it. So, I mean, we've talked about a number of different things. Is there anything we've missed that I've not mentioned so far that you want to bring up?
Oh goodness. I don't know. I feel like this is the most comprehensive I think anyone has ever been for something like this. No, I don't think so. I think at least that's going on right now. I think you've Well, I will say one thing that I haven't brought up, and I'm going to say this because I'm just having so much fun with it. But is on Fridays I'm doing this show. It's Ladies of Lake over at Ladies of D&D, and this one is Dungeons and Dragons, specifically Lasers and Liches, and we are a 1980s girl rock band who has found
Nice.
ourselves in Arthurian fantasy, and it is ridiculous, and I'm very much enjoying it. So that's one other thing I feel that I should mention, because I don't know, I would be sad if I missed it because it's so ridiculous. Anyway,
No,
but yeah,
that absolutely plug and promo anything and everything. That's part of what this is for. This is not just to get to know you better. It's to find out where we can continue to enjoy all the things you're associated with. So it's not like we said at the start. We've got the third season of the Harbingers Action coming up. There's ways to support you on social media and various other platforms. So yeah, no, absolutely. If there's something going on and you want to shout about it, please shout it out.
it's just too fun. I'm really lucky right now to be playing a lot of games that I really enjoy, but I have played games in the past. You always hope you're going to enjoy a game, but sometimes you don't. And so when I do, I'm very excited, and this one is a blast. So just gonna share.
I will make sure there's a link to Ladies of D&D down below, so people can go and find you there and follow their content as well, because they're great. So before we sort of get to the end and sort of close out this interview, Meghan, would you mind reminding everybody where they can find you on social media and everything you're associated with, please?
Certainly. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Meghan Caves. On Facebook, it's at Meghan Caves Actor, or meghancaves.com. You can just find all of my stuff there as well. And Gone Rogue Entertainment, gonerogueentertainment.com, youtube.com/Gone Rogue Entertainment for everything that's being posted video-wise, and then Gone Rogue ENT on the socials. Harbingers is the Savage World show. It is at Harbingers RPG on all of the socials. Yeah, those are the main things. Of course, Axion will be coming out July 5th. That will be on Valor Studios, Valor Studios rather, and on their Twitch. And then Ladies of D&D, or Ladies of Lake, is on Ladies of D&D on their Twitch. I think that's all. I think that's the gist of it right now.
Well, I'll make sure there's a link to your Linktree, which has your Patreon, Ko-fi, and various other
Yes.
links for your
Thank
social
you.
media, including your YouTube channel, which we haven't sort of touched on too much. But
Yes.
we can maybe talk about that next time if you're willing to come back, because it's been an absolute pleasure
Yes.
having the time to chat with you this afternoon for you, evening for me.
Yeah,
This
I can do
day.
both. This day. Yeah, this was great. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, Meghan. I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter at ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon. And we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review, because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.